This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is a show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, type in Old Dog, spelled D-A-W-G, find our podcast, and subscribe. Well, we've got a fun show for you today. I'm real excited to bring somebody here that has a great story to share. Her name is Rachel Prince. She is a real estate broker and rentalpreneur, featured in Inc. magazine, the Indie Star, and on the Ron LeGrand Mentor podcast. Rachel Prince has been called the Maven of Airbnb short-term renting. Author of Airbnb Mentality and Airbnb Side Hustle, Rachel is also the creator of Buy BNB, the online Airbnb real estate investing course. From a renter struggling to pay her rent to owning several B&B homes and running a six-figure short-term rental property management company, Rachel is all about optimizing assets. We love that. As the podcast host of Airbnb Entrepreneur Podcast, Rachel regularly interviews Airbnb hosts and influencers. In 2017, Rachel relocated her Airbnb real estate business to the Indianapolis market with FC Tucker Real Estate Firm, carving her niche in the Midwest B&B world. Rachel graduated from Bowdoin College with a BA double major in International Relations and Spanish. Well, Rachel, welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Hey, Bill. As I've said to you this before, you have the face for radio. So,
you are
is...
so mean.
No, really, but your voice is awesome for podcasts. I love that you're doing it.
Thank you. Well, I am very stoked to have you here. And, Rachel, I had met her when I first started experimenting with Airbnbs. Boy, she really got to see the experiment happen here. It was a tough go, but finally got around to, sort of optimizing,
Yes.
making the moves I had to do to make it work well. And I'm loving Airbnb. But Rachel, I want to hear about your story. I mean, I'd love to know just, how you started off and how you even came into all this crazy Airbnb world.
Yeah, and Bill, like the fact that we go way back, running some of your Airbnbs in Indianapolis and working on that it was so much fun. And obviously I want to do more of those multi-units, apartment building things. And it was, I think we had so much fun doing it, and also so much interesting things come up to learn. And I think that's part of this whole short-term rental process is a lot of it is just learning curves, and you go through the process of just diving in and seeing what it brings forth into one's life. And that's what happened to me. I literally went from food stamps to running a 6-figure short-term rental property management company within 6 months, from head to toe there. So it's been an interesting journey. I've been doing this for about 6-7 years now. And I started renting a place in Colorado. I'm from Colorado. So I had just moved back to Colorado, was getting back on my feet from some health stuff. And I thought, well, it's either Uber or Airbnb. And because I had a Honda Element, I couldn't do the Uber because the back doors wouldn't open properly. So I did Airbnb. And I realized that it was like the easiest money I'd ever made. So I, without my landlord's permission, of course, went ahead and proceeded to ask for forgiveness later. I kind of just needed the money, I feel like. And I was also building my brand at the time. I really worked on what my purpose was here in my life. And I really focused on calling that in. And I set that intention, like, what am I here to do? And as I did that, I just realized my passion for the Airbnb short-term rental hospitality world. And then it allowed me to get my real estate license. And then I started teaching classes and consulting people on the short-term rental process. And I became an ambassador for Airbnb and was getting paid to set out my link for referrals and getting people signed up on Airbnb. And I really, as an entrepreneur who had her first company at 23 and lost a lot of money, I realized that Airbnb was amazing because it was just like the click of a button, you could be making money. And so I didn't have to create anything. I didn't have to develop an app or software or anything or spend money to do it. I literally just had to find unused assets. And so I quickly understood just basically the importance of owning real estate and or getting your hands on other people's real estate. I saw the benefit in that, and I wanted to devote my career, which was, all over the place before this, and I wanted to just devote it. I finally found something that I was, wanted to give my full attention to. And so after realizing that the legislation had kind of shut down on Airbnb in Denver and the real estate market was just capped out and just so high that, it didn't make sense, I decided and I tell people the story, I went to a fortune builders workshop with Than Merrill's Fortune Builders Workshop before I knew I was going to Indianapolis. And I woke up one day, 40 years old, and I was like, I don't have any assets. I don't have a home. I don't have a 401k. I don't have a career. What am I doing? And I kind of just the light bulb moment, Mm-hmm. And at that point I decided, I really need to make a move here. I need to get my foot in the door. I need to get an asset. I need to own real estate. And that is, I think that's the difference between me and some of the other people out there doing arbitrage with Airbnb is, I really understood at that moment the importance of owning the asset. And so I said, how am I going to do this? I don't make an income. I don't have any income on my taxes. I'm not showing an income really. Or if it's very low. And so I was just like, how do I do this? Well, that was the beginning of my endeavors in figuring out how real estate worked, figuring out what the mortgage lenders needed and required of me or of someone who shows very little income to actually get to own real estate. And that was the key to launching me forward when I moved to Indianapolis and realized here's the formula I need in order to buy a house, in order to be a viable human being that is going to be lending money to invest in real estate. And once I figured that part out, it was all downhill from there. I knew I could start Airbnb-ing easily and make the money back and make the mortgage and even do better than that. I started a property management company And it just spiraled up from there. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
That is so great. That's a smart way to approach it, because I think that's where a lot of the breakdown is when people look at real estate, they just get lost up in that whole mortgage process. And how am I going to get the money? Maybe their credit's not that great, or maybe they just don't have the down payment. But I think the fact that you dove in and sort of analyzed and understood the lending part of it really gave you an advantage. I'm sure it does for your clients as well.
Yeah, that was exactly it. I didn't have any of those things. I didn't have the down payment. I didn't have the credit. I didn't have, the W-2 job. All of these things were going against me. And as the underdog, here I am 40 years old. Some people are retiring, after their mid 50s. And I'm here thinking like, how do I get some assets and a retirement plan? So I think I'm starting late. But my advice is to people out there, or my, motivational talk is anyone can do it at any time in their life, even if you're 50 years old. I talk to people who are 50 and creating their formula. And it's a repeatable formula. That's why I developed my online course, Buy Airbnb, because I wanted people to understand you can get your credit back into a place that the lenders will lend to you. And here's how you do it. You can create a down payment, and here's how you do it. Part of the little secret is you got to save some money. But I was not a saver. My parents always said, save money, Rachel. But I was like, they never taught me how. They just expected me to. Mm-hmm. And also becoming a realtor, I learned the inside tricks that a lot of people don't teach you, or teach a realtor doesn't necessarily teach their buyer how this process works. They just say, oh, you're qualified to buy. I can help you buy a house. I teach my clients, here's what you need to do to buy, and here's some loopholes that, legal loopholes that you can do in order to propel you faster or into the real estate world. And then short-term renting.
That's great. Now, when you were in Colorado, were you in a single-family home? Were you in an apartment when you started your first Airbnb?
Yeah, I was in a duplex. It was like a 900 square foot duplex with 2 bedrooms. The bedrooms were at the opposite ends of the duplex. So I was on one side of the duplex. It was like $800 when all the other rentals were like $2,100. So in that sense, I had a low rent to pay, and understood the importance of, when you're Airbnb, that needs to translate too. I have a lot of clients who want to buy like high-end places, and I'm like, but your mortgage is going to be really high. And then that means you need to earn, a lot more in order to break even or to create a profit. So from very early, I kind of understood the setup needed to be, in the right, everything has to be in the right configuration to create an ROI when you're short-term renting.
Right. So you have sort of an analyzer, or a way that you, maybe a spreadsheet or something that you have to plug in the numbers to make it make sense?
Yes. Yeah. So for me, I use Click to Flip. John is a friend, and he created that. I think his name is John Crosby, but he created the Click, CLIKT, with the number 2 flip. So Click number 2 flip, Click to Flip app, and you can literally just go on and do some analyzing right there on the app, and get your return and plug in all the numbers for either a flip, a vacation rental, or just a regular real estate property. So he kind of have figured out how to make it easier. And he also gave us a form, like a deal analyzer spreadsheet that I offer to people in the course who take the course. So yes, they can run their numbers and plug their numbers, but let's just put it this way. The math doesn't lie. If your mortgage is going to be $2,500 or $3,500 or even higher than that, if you're in a big city, we got to do the math here. Like if you're only getting $55 a night for 30 days, that's not going to cover it. Right. So there's some common sense involved in this. Obviously we have to make more than our expenses are.
Right, yeah. Right. And you've got to get the right kind of property to get the premium rents, I would imagine, right? So it's like, if you're just getting just a regular place, a nice place, a decent place, you've got to know what the market is, and that could be changing, isn't that true? Or to a certain degree?
Yeah, and what's interesting is like let's take your apartment building for
Hmm.
example in Indianapolis. That area is, at some point, and even when I was helping you with that property, it was kind of like, well, is this an area that people will want to stay in? Is it too far from the city? Even though that was only like 10 minutes, drive.
Right.
Those are all questions that we have in our mind. But I think what you were devoted to was creating the right space and the right price. And you were committed to doing 30-day rentals. And that devotion right there and commitment to that attracted people. And so a lot of this is just a mind game. The field of dreams thing. If you build it, it will come. And I really believe that intention is half the battle. And it's a lot of it is mindset. In fact, that's the first module in my course is all about mindset, because really with mindset, you're setting the foundation for your whole journey. And if you don't have a good mindset and a good mindset practice to fall back on, what are you falling back to? Your old programming and negativity that's just going to take you down a rabbit hole? No, that's not how we do this game. We have to think like the wealthy. We have to think like those who are setting out on their journey and hitting their goals. And that's what I did. There was no looking back. And I mean, oftentimes it wasn't easy, and it was hard. It was difficult. But I only had one end goal, and that was to own my first real estate property, and now I own two, so doubled.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now you're doing a lot of other things besides that, though. I mean, you've got the Airbnbs,
Yeah.
but you're yes, you're obviously an active investor, but you're also managing properties and dealing as a realtor, right? So you've
Right.
got a lot of plates you're juggling, right?
Yeah, it's true. And I love doing the real estate and helping my clients. A lot of my clients have never even seen the house. They'll buy it sight unseen, and they trust me to help them buy the house and set it up and run it for them.
Oh wow! So you're doing like out of state investors and so forth?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. And I just
okay.
had a client recently. They wished for help to buy the property, but they wanted to manage it. And so they went through the course, and it's been really fun to watch them excel at this, and they're enjoying the process as it goes. And there's a huge learning curve, and it's just something that they're like having fun with, and both of them can work remote, so they can travel and take time off to go to their property if they wish to. And then I run about 30 short-term rental properties for clients from all over. Some are in Indy. A lot of them are out-of-town investors. And, at some point I've capped off at about 30 properties, and I'm looking for, right now, exploring options to expand and how I can do that. So yeah, it's been quite a process.
Well, yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling for me because I remember just dealing with just the simple part of just communicating with potential short-term or long-term guests, and and multiplying that times 30. I mean, that's huge. I mean, you've got to coordinate. People will ask. I get the question all the time: how far are you from downtown? Or is this a safe area? I mean, you get all these little questions before they actually commit, and that can get kind of nebulous too. And then there's the sort of once they're there, you got to give them the instructions on how to get in and all the sort of the rules of the road, and then checking out procedures, all those things. I mean, that's a lot to orchestrate for, I mean, I know you've got some great people working with you. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you're sort of doing that and scaling.
I think what comes to mind is that guess I'm really good at being direct and bossy and controlling, because I have to have things done a certain way. And so I need some level of compliance with, my team. And at the same time, I also aim to create a loving environment where people, my teammates, feel safe and that I have their back, and my cleaners. And sometimes there's this he said, she said, and the guest said, and then the cleaner said, and I will always default to my team, but I also have to support the cleaners and my clients. So I'm supporting a lot of different people, and sometimes it goes unnoticed. So I think in general, the person in steering the ship has to kind of have a thick skin and really know what they're after and the level of quality and performance that we're commanding and demanding. And so I see myself as an entrepreneur and visionary, and I also want to have fun in the process. So I look to have all of those elements involved in the journey. Technology. I'm also very tech savvy, and I feel like this could not be done without technology. I have to have automation in there. I have a 24/7 answering service, which buffers a lot of the calls and questions. And, I would say that automation and creating documents and Google Docs that the team can share and having a workflow is super crucial and vital to the success and ability to expand and scale.
Yeah, that was one thing that was real impressive even back then when we were working together, is that you had a lot of those kind of common things that you have this sort of the same response once they book, and a lot of that seemed like it was just triggered automatically, and their name just kind of popped in the template, and it and that's that's got to save you a lot of time, I'm sure.
What's interesting, I just taught a B&B bootcamp automation course in Indianapolis, and it was the first one I'd done on it because I was telling them right when I started the classes, say, like, you guys are pioneers. Like, this, that you're in this class tells me that you're realizing that there's opportunity for you to save money by not necessarily hiring a property manager and doing this yourself and realizing that you can. I mean, currently, as you know, Bill, I'm sitting out in a car in front of the Hoover Dam.
Yes, I picture it looks beautiful.
Yeah, I'm sitting out in front of the Mead Lake, and I'm working remote, hanging out with some friends in the Las Vegas boat harbor. And I just came to the car to do this podcast with you. That's how I choose to live my life, and how I choose to do my work day. And my friends understand that I need to walk away and do, this or that. But that's the price I pay, which to me is not a price. Like, that's why I do this. So I do it for the freedom lifestyle. I do that so that I have liberty to kind of, to live life this way and keep doing fun things. So yeah, it's not bad. Not a bad gig.
No, it sounds wonderful. And at one point, did you ever sort of look at, especially as arbitrage sort of emerging and getting to be a big thing, did you ever sort of weigh out the arbitrage versus the owning the property? And what were the differences, and that really convinced you needed to buy the properties?
Yeah, a lot. I got some people that were doing arbitrage. They were subletting, and they had permission to do Airbnb. And what I realized was that it didn't seem to be a viable long-term solution, because eventually rents change and or needs change by that person who's subletting, and so, or some little angle changes. I mean, an HOA could go up for an owner, and then whoever's renting that property and running Airbnb would have to, absorb the higher rents, and or somehow it just didn't seem to be the long-term viable option. And I talk about this in my course and my book that's coming out by B&B, that we don't have the benefit of appreciation and if we rent. We only have the benefit of appreciation, of potential appreciation with real estate. So if we own the asset, we buy it for $80,000, then in 10 years or even 20 years, we potentially can sell that for, $500,000. And I've seen it happen. I've been the realtor on the other end of that, where I've helped a client sell for, $564,000 when they bought it for $80,000. Now, that is a success story. And that is also a potential retirement plan.
Exactly. And you do have an asset that you have control of too. And I think that's the thing with arbitrage, which is real frustrating. You're subject to whoever owns or manages that apartment or that house or whatever it is. And so you really can't sort of, control things, and it's your business. So you either just bail and have to go somewhere else and pull all your furniture out and do whatever, or if you own it, you've got that added benefit. But I like what you're saying too, especially
Exactly.
as a lot of people listening to this are focused on retirement. That there is something more at sort of at the end of that rainbow there, that can very much fund your retirement years.
Yeah, end of the rainbow. I like that.
Just doing this, I'm sure, because you're a pioneer, you started off in it when it was pretty new. You must have encountered those things that didn't go so well that today you've really learned from, and it's really kind of helped you to make a better business. But what kind of some people don't like the word mistake, but I think mistakes are great because I learn so much from my mistakes. So what were those things that happened that really that really early on help you to shape and re-cue your business for success?
Yeah, and that's good. You reminded me of what I was alluding to before with the automations, of telling everybody, like, we're kind of the new pioneers for short-term rentals. Even though short-term rentals have been around for a while, we are learning how to do the automation process and how to set up our lifestyles with all this new technology that's kind of coming out designed for this lifestyle. So everybody's gonna start seeing more streamlined softwares and automation processes that are going to assist this. And in fact, one of them, someone came to me on Facebook and said, "Hey, what do you think about someone who manages your security ring apps? So it can tell you if they've got an issue, like you getting too many pings on your Ring security camera." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's great. I love that idea." So there's so many ideas percolating, and we are at the forefront of this. And in that process, I would say one of the mistakes has not been so much a mistake as it has been limitations in technology. I need this, and I don't get this because it's so new, and they're literally developing it, in live time. Like, it's right now. I'm like, I need this, and so they're like, okay, well, let us see if we can create that on the software. So some of my needs are not necessarily fully thought out, and I think that creates a backlash. Sometimes there's some things that I wished I had and that the guest might not get because for example, the software somehow changed and a guest was able to get the code last minute, same day check-in, and they got the code on the same day they booked, rather. And we don't usually allow that, but something changed in the software, and then they had a party because they were given the code and they weren't screened properly. These things create mistakes. So the software lined up and certain procedures and, having a screening process is so important to the success of the business. And I think my biggest failures have been from training new assistants and them not really understanding this screening process, and then allowing holes, and then somehow there's a party that happened. So that but now we're getting really good at shutting those down if it ever happens, and so we haven't had any damages from those, touch wood. But the reality is that is our biggest red flag, and something that we're always aware of making the mistake on behalf of the guest, and the client is saying, like, did we allow someone to book who shouldn't be booking? Are they going to be using the place for a party or something that we just don't allow? So those are our biggest red flags and concerns. I would say again, making sure everybody's trained and up to speed, because that's where errors can happen, is when someone doesn't know. One of the things that happened recently was I put the wrong street name in a auto message that went out. So the girl called and was hysterical, talking to the answering service, talking to the assistant, and they hadn't really been trained on hysteria. So they didn't know how to respond. They weren't very nice. And then the guest wasn't nice. And I called her, and she was like afraid for her security. And I said, "Oh no, it was just a typo. If you go into the Airbnb app, you can see what the address is." So she was putting a lot of weight on just the message that I sent her, and it was a typo. And I couldn't figure out where that typo was. I finally found it, and I just said, "Look, I'm really sorry." And she's like, "Well, it's too late. Your your assistant is just, they were awful, and this and that." And, of course I couldn't make excuses. So what are you going to do? You just have to like suck it up and apologize. And, sometimes it's too late. I will say one other mistake that recently happened, because I keep learning in this process, is that Airbnb has this rule. It's like the rule that trumps all rules, is that our guest, they somehow turned off the water at one of our multi-units. It was a triplex, and we didn't know about it until the guest informed us. And there is another property manager that works on it and said, well, we paid the bill. There's some confusion on the behalf of the utility company. They couldn't figure out the confusion, and therefore the guest was left without water. And then by the second day, the company still hadn't come out and they hadn't fixed it, turned the water back on. The third day, they turned the water back on, but by then the guest had already called into Airbnb. And if you're without water for 2 days on Airbnb, or some, like maybe heat or electricity, then Airbnb has a de facto rule that says the guest is entitled to half refund. Well, this wasn't just a guest for 2 days. This was a guest for 1 month. So they were entitled to a 1 month's refund, half of 1 month's refund in this space. So that was a huge learning lesson. My assistant was like, I guess I could have put her in another unit, and that probably, and I said, yeah, on second thought, I probably should have allowed you to do that, but it didn't make sense at the time, because we told her, you can just go to a motel if you want. We'll work out the details later, but she chose to stay. And despite that, I told Airbnb, she wanted to stay. She was fine with it. And they said, it doesn't matter. It's our policy. So I'm always learning these weird things. And so, but you roll with the punches. You take the loss sometimes.
Yeah. And in the long run, though, it works out. It's just like bad reviews. I had my share of those early on. And, what I've found is, since we've kind of also gone to, short term as well as the 30-day, that, you can make up for that. If you keep doing good service, the more good ones you get, it'll start bringing your rating back up again. But yeah, that's so true.
Hard lessons to learn. And after 6-7 years, I'm still learning them. So, it is what it is.
What do you think is something, sort of your biggest success, something that you've done that has really worked out well for you?
I haven't finalized my taxes this year to see my gross numbers, but we're probably close to 7 figures. So I would say that's probably one of my biggest successes. And also, just my net worth has just spiraled up from, being on food stamps and not having my health and not having any assets and a zero net worth to like this. And it's just, recognizing that and how far I've come and realizing, easy come, easy go. But at the same time, it sure is a fun process along the way. And it's just cool to see. Yeah, it's cool to see the success that I've had over the last few years.
Do you have sort of a formula that you're working on in terms of acquisitions? Like, well, I'm going to I set aside this amount, and then just kind of, as you achieve that, you just keep constantly buying new properties.
Yeah, actually, it reminds me, because the last question you asked me was, what was one of your biggest failures? And actually, just put out a press release on this. It's been one of my, so I had a bunch of money saved up to buy my next house, because I would say every 2 years I replenish and save and I'm ready to buy again. And that's kind of like my formula. I'll move my primary, right? So I call it the move your primary system, where I actually move from my primary to my next primary and rent, and then start renting out that. And that is a complete formula for how I do that. And I do talk about that in my Buy B&B course, because there is a process and the lenders are going to want to see it. And you've got to follow this formula very closely. But I had to spend that money on a lawsuit. And you asked me the last question, the biggest failure. I think that was probably my biggest, most expensive one, was when I had a client in Colorado, and he didn't change the payout method after we stopped working together. So 3 years later, he realized it. And one day I get a lawsuit notice, or well, he came to me asking for the money back, and then he sued me. But I didn't know that it was his money because I wasn't working for him anymore. And after
Oh,
3 years, he told me that he'd acquired all this profit from Airbnb that he never got paid out on. It was paying me, and Airbnb doesn't tell you where the money's coming from. It just pays you out.
Mm-hmm.
And it just tells you, numbers. And so because I had so many properties over the years, I didn't know that was from him. But I did see a slight surplus, but I don't know. I couldn't stop it. Right. So I'd even asked Airbnb about it, and they didn't know either. So it's like one big confusion. So after a lawsuit, after getting lawyers involved, anyway, I had to pay that back. That was money that I was going to use for my next house. So that put me back a little bit. So I would say to people, make sure that whoever's managing your property, and if you're managing someone's property, that you've got some guidelines in place, that it's all very spelled out and clear, and you've got a system for your payouts, and that when you break ties, you really break ties, because, and make sure that the liability is separated out. And I have a contract that I had a lawyer write up that makes it very clear what my responsibilities are and my liabilities, and, alleviating me from certain liabilities as a property manager. So working with a realtor is a good idea, just to manage your properties if you're going to go that route, and that's required in some states, actually, to have a property manager who's a realtor. There's kind of a gray area in there. So yeah.
Now that's good. That's a good lesson, definitely.
Yeah. So it's success and lesson. I would say it all gets tied in, because now I get to save more, and I'm going to work on buying my next house and, replenishing my savings for that down payment. So, I mean, it's already happening. So, yeah. So, there's ups and downs in this game.
Now, is your focus primarily on single-family homes, or are you trying to buy small multis? What's sort of the next acquisition?
I have two goals. One is probably at my next single-family residence to live in, and or possibly something maybe in a different city. So maybe Tucson. I'm headed to Tucson after Las Vegas here.
Okay.
I love the idea of having a little RV park or tiny home park or something. I love the desert. So for me, that's kind of, something I'm looking to do.
Very cool. Very cool. So you're not, it's not a problem going out of state in terms of setting up Airbnbs in other places.
Well, just because I like being a snowbird, and I don't like to be in Indy in the winter, then it's no problem for me.
Got it. Well, a lot of our folks listening, or at least our target audience, although we have, people across the age spectrum here, we focus a lot of our efforts on those that are 50 years and older, that are either approaching retirement or in retirement. They're realizing that they may not have what they had anticipated as they planned for their retirement years. And so they're looking towards real estate investing, Airbnb, and other means to be able to make up the difference there, and maybe create a legacy at the end of it all. What advice would you have for those folks, looking at their situation? They don't have a long time span, like a younger person would, but they are, also looking at a means to generate some cash flow. I mean, what would be your advice on how to get started doing that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a couple of loaded questions in there. Like, are these people realizing they need more funds for their retirement, or are they just getting started? Is this for just them, or to create the legacy? So I think it definitely depends on what angle or what approach you're going for. However, all I want to say is that it's like I had started off with in this. I think it's never too late to create your retirement fund or to expand your retirement fund, as long as you're getting creative about your investing solutions. And this is what it is to me. This is creative real estate investing. And as long as you I think it's important to call in the professionals, make sure you're dealing with B&B realtors who understand this process. If you decide to get into the Airbnb and vacation rental world, make sure you have a good lender who understands investing, even short-term rentals. Now they're getting to be more educated on that. And then as well, like if you have a financial planner, I think those are all important to explore. I think we don't need to be doing this alone. So there's a lot of information out there. There's this podcast. There's a bunch of different real estate podcasts out there, and especially designed for investing and retirement and vacation rentals. So it's important that we do our due diligence and, stay in the right mindset along the way. And I know a lot of some older investors who, and younger too, who are either they're experienced or not, but that mindset has turned them off the game. And that is not how we need to be. You have to take risks. Everything is risky when you're investing. You have to take risks to do this. And therefore we need some mindset preparation to get into the right mind frame in order to take these risks. We want to make good decisions and good risks. But, in the end, I think it's just important to, I have this sense of detachment. And if I lose it all, or if I don't have anything, I know, because I've been there, that I will still find ways to have fun and enjoy my life. And that's really an important angle. So yeah, I think it's kind of the whole thing, the whole enchilada.
I think the thing that really I thought would be of interest to our listeners is the fact that you are a rentalpreneur, and the fact that a lot of these people that they've worked all their life, they don't want another job,
Right.
And if they hire somebody like yourself or someone that is that oversees this, then it becomes a passive source of income, and,
Right.
And that's the appeal, I think. You give up a little percentage of your earnings, but the overall is that you've got somebody that's experienced and knows how to do it, that really running the show, and you're just benefiting from from that. That to me, I thought was one of the major appeals, because it really does look like it's a great passive form of income.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's ways to do it where it's more passive than others. If you get a property manager, you have to pay them, and you do lose some of your ROI. However, I think in the end, there are ways, if you retire and you want a little side gig, this is a great option, especially if you've only got one or two properties. If you've got 30, yeah, you're probably going to need help.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Well, you've got this great business that you've just nurtured and brought up to this, this level. What's sort of your end game? Where do you want to go with this? And what's your vision for the future of your company?
Yeah, I feel like doing more consulting with, 10 to 12 units. I'm getting some really creative projects coming at me to say that we're going to be building this, and we'd like your perspective on it, and how to create systems and automations for that, and how to build the team, as well as I'd love to be running, my little B&B park in the desert, and continuing to consult at a higher level, and potentially working on some partnerships right now with companies like Rolio and other large companies. So we'll see kind of where that takes me in the upcoming years. And I also know that you and I have talked about the B&B automation boot camp, and how we can get some more people in the LA area coming up interested in that automation boot camp next month. And so I'll be doing a little bit of those B&B boot camps, automation boot camps. I want to teach people that they don't need to give away 25 to 40% of their profits to a property manager. They can do this themselves and still have free time.
Love it. Do you have a date for that yet?
Yeah, they can go to rentalpreneur.com, and rentalpreneur.com, and I have the dates. I'll put them on there.
And I'll have a link to that in our show notes, of course.
Oh, great. Yeah, because it's on Eventbrite.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I know. And I'm sure they'd love to hear your stories of the of the apartment building too, because gosh, we have some good ones.
Oh yeah, yeah. The just part of just basics. Just don't open Airbnb next to an apartment where they're making cooking crack. You just just want to avoid that now. Okay.
Yeah, but at least they have the really nice chandelier to look at.
There you go, and you got the really pretty
taste.
chandelier.
I know, because I bought one for my house too. I love looking at that thing. So good job. You have good taste. Takes your eyes off the crack. So yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we kind of zipped by here faster than I had hoped here, and so we have a little thing we call our wrap it up, where I ask you a series of, it's kind of a lightning round, ask you a series of quick questions on resources that you have used that would be valuable to you. If you are ready, we can go ahead and jump into our wrap it up session.
Fire away.
Okay, favorite real estate book.
Oh gosh, Kiyosaki. Definitely something
Rich
by
Dad,
Kiyosaki.
Rich Dad,
Anything by Kiyosaki.
Yeah, all his stuff is great. Excellent.
And I know he's been a guest on your show.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
Lucky.
Hey, he'll just a matter of time before he gets on your show.
Yes.
Yeah, he's starting to do stuff on Airbnb, so you need to get your foot.
I'm working on it.
Favorite general business book?
General business. There's one I just read called The Relationship Economy. His name is failing me. He's been on my podcast too, but it's called The Relationship Economy.
Well, how about most valuable website for success that you use on a regular basis?
Rentalpreneur.com.
Okay, other than your own, okay.
Just kidding. I knew you were going to say that. Well, Airbnb.com. Hello, that's like my life. Click to Flip is the app that I use for tell people to use for pulling data.
There you go. I was just going to ask favorite app.
Yes. Oh, favorite app.
Is that your favorite app?
No. Let me see here. I have another favorite app. Okay. So here's a favorite app that I have for my property checks. So like when I send my assistant out to go do a property check at a house, we create a little template through. It's called Easy Inspection. So Easy Inspection, download it. It's free. You can create your own little inspection tool, just like be a little inspector, go out and it'll send you a full report in color with pictures, and it's amazing. And they charge a lot of money for those apps. So this one is free and it's totally worth it. It might even be like $2.99 or something a month, but it's totally worth it.
I never heard of it before. That is very cool. Oh, awesome. Good. I'm learning new stuff here.
Yes.
How about favorite quote?
Be the change. Was that Gandhi or something?
Maybe.
So.
Or Dave Ramsey. You never know. No.
Yeah, well, probably. Be the change. Like, you gotta want it and to embody it. So
there you go. Okay, last one here. If you had lost absolutely everything you built up and all you had left was $1,000 in cash, what would you do with that $1,000 to relaunch your real estate investing business?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think I would do my 60-10-10-10 rule, which is you got to tithe some of it, you got to save some of it, you got to spend and invest some of it, and the other you live on. So, yeah.
All right. Good advice. Well, there are a lot of people listening here that are saying, hey, this sounds really cool. I want to know more. I want to find out what this is about. How can they reach Rachel and find out what you're doing about your boot camps and your resources? And I know you've got also a YouTube channel, right? And all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
So,
it's all of it is on rentalpreneur.com. And that's basically if you Google how to spell entrepreneur, because a lot of people don't know how. And you just put rental before preneur. So rentalpreneur.com has all the information to my podcast and to my, I'm not that active on my YouTube channel, but I do have some blogs, and I have my online course, Buy B&B, which is also connected on there. You can go to buybnb.net as well. And most of it's just located on rentalpreneur.com though.
Awesome. Well, there will be a link in our show notes. Well, Rachel, this has been so cool having you on. And God, I'm just so excited for your success. And it looks like it's just going to keep on going. So I will have to have you back in the future. And you'll just, fly into LA with your private jet and you can
Yes.
interview live here.
My solar jet, right?
Oh, of course.
I'm
Yeah, you're not
very
going to
eco.
burn the carbons or anything. No.
Yes.
Well, we have a tradition here, and if you checked your notes, you'll know that we're called the Old Dogs REI Network. So all of our guests, even Robert Kiyosaki, close us out with their best old hound dog howl.
Oh my goodness. What's this going to be like? Well, great. Well, first of all, Bill, thank you so much. You're such a pro. You're your old dog, and I really appreciate you. And look forward to what we can create moving into the future, and much success. All right, my old dog howl.
Yep.
I think my dad used to do this. Okay, ready? Ow! Ow!
Well, that was a good one. Whoa.
Thank you.
Must be being out there in the desert or something, It's just kind of inspiring you, Well, thanks so much, Rachel, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Also want to thank all our old dog listeners out there, too, for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we really appreciate it. Please note, everything presented here today can be accessed in our detailed show notes on the Old Dogs website at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog. And all the little tips that Rachel shared and all this stuff is going to be in there. Look for the episode, of course, with Rachel Prince. Well, that's the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.